everyone, and welcome back to Speedrunners and Coffee. My guest today is an actual professor, believe it or not, and is a prolific speedrunner in first-person shooters such as Fashion Police Squad, Doom 2016, Rage, Cyberpunk 2077, Parodius. Or wait, is it Parodius or Parodus?
Proteus.
Proteus, thank you. Rage 2 and a couple of Resident Evils to boot, as well as Scorn. Mr. Professor Danejerus.
Hello.
How you doing today, sir?
I'm good. I got my coffee because that's the name of the show, and I'm ready. Let's do this.
Excellent. The first guest to actually be having coffee during the show. Can we get some hype in the comments? Yes. So, what got you into speedrunning?
So I kind of stumbled backward into speedrunning in a weird way. I was back in it was like 2017. I was trying to beat Doom 2016 on Ultra Nightmare on the PlayStation 4. And for anybody that doesn't know the Doom difficulties, Ultra Nightmare is the hardest difficulty, Nightmare, plus Iron Man mode, permadeath. If you die, you go back to the beginning of level 1. So you have to do the whole thing in one life. And you can only quit out in between levels. So like you can't quit out in the middle of a level or you erase the save file. So it's a very demanding and very intensive kind of completion. And I couldn't do it. I was like, I'm not as good with the controller as I am with the keyboard and mouse. And so I was like, all right, I got to switch back to PC gaming in order to actually beat this. So at the time I'd been on Mac because that's what I'd been using when I was in grad school. And my Mac was just dying. It was like 6 years old at this point. It was like, all right, I got to get a new computer. This might be the time to switch over to PC gaming. And so I switched back to PC and got a hold of Doom and on Steam and started trying to beat it on Ultra Nightmare. Finally beat it at like August of 2018. And I started streaming at this point because I was streaming my attempts of trying to complete it. And prior to that point, I had while I was trying to beat it on PlayStation 4, I had found this little YouTuber named Bite Me. All the Doom OGs know who that is, and I was just like watching his videos, trying to glean whatever little bits of knowledge and skill that I could from him, and so I was like, leaving comments like, "Hey, how did you do this part?" And he was like very gracious and responded, and it was like, yeah, and like you could do it this way, and I was like, oh, that's awesome, thank you so much. And he's like, yeah, man, hey, you should come watch me on Twitch, and I was like, yeah, absolutely. What's a Twitch? I didn't know what that was at the time, and so I sort of he kind of pointed me in the direction of his channel, and I found this whole website of streamers and people doing speedruns and stuff, and I was like kind of blown away by it. And once I finally beat Ultra Nightmare, he was like, all right, now you got to beat 100% Ultra Nightmare. You got to beat Ultra Nightmare, but you got to do everything instead of just getting to the end of the game. And I was like, all right. Now, little did I know at the time that he was actually manipulating me a little bit, and I'm not going to hold this against him. He and I are actually really good friends now, but he was manipulating me just a little bit when he was doing this, because what he was trying to do was get a second completion of Ultra Nightmare 100% because nobody else had done it besides him at that point. Well, once I finally got it, it was in like October, I think, of 2018. I finally got my completed 100% Ultra Nightmare, and he was like, okay, we got to make a highlight. I was like, all right, I don't know why we're doing this, but sure. And so we made a highlight, and he's like, okay, here's a link to the Speedrun Discord. And we went into the Speedrun Discord, and he was like, hey, this runner did a second completion of 100% Ultra Nightmare. Can we get it added to the leaderboard? They finally added it as a category. It wasn't a category up to that point because he was the only one to do it. Nobody else was doing 100% Ultra Nightmare runs. And so they added it. And at this point, I'm still like, I still don't really even know what a speedrun is. I'm still kind of like, what is this thing that everybody keeps talking, like they keep talking about adding to a leaderboard? What leaderboard? What are we talking about? And I very slowly started to garner what was actually happening as the more I was engrossed in it. And finally, they added the categories to a leaderboard, and I saw my name up there, and I was like, okay, so I guess I'm doing the speedrun thing now. And the more I became involved with it, the more I realized this is actually a lot of fun. I kind of like doing this sort of competitive thing with beating video games quickly. And it was right around that time that I happened to stumble across a YouTube video of, I don't remember the runner's name, but it was a Duke Nukem 3D speedrun at GDQ. I think it was a GDQ 2015 or 16, I think. Or it was right around that time period. And I just remember watching this video and laughing so hard at some of the glitches they were doing. And I started to slowly get immersed into it for there. So it wasn't really like I had like this hard moment where it was like, okay, I'm now a speedrunner. I guess you could say like when I finally completed my first speed run, that was it. But it was a very slow process before I sort of realized that I was a speedrunner now. It's sort of a very slow blend into the life of the speedrunning community. But yeah, that's kind of how I got started in speedrunning.
That is quite the story just to be thrown into a Discord like that. Like, oh man,
Yeah.
it was just
Yeah,
like,
they just kind of threw me in there. They're like, "Hey, we need you in here to get this added to the leaderboard." Like, okay, I don't know what we're doing, but sure. And lo and behold, that's how that happened.
well, at least it wasn't like I'm throwing you to the wolves.
Yeah, right.
At least you had somebody being like, okay, like you have someone that has your back at least instead of just like,
Yeah, it was more like I was there to have his back. Like he needed a second runner in there to like be like, hey, we've got a second runner for the leaderboard. So it was more like I was just there to be a body for him to say like, hey, we've got 2 runners now. Can we get a leaderboard for it? So it was more like I was backing him up than anything else. I had very little to do with it aside from just existing, and he was the one doing all the hard pushing. Bite has since retired though. He's a family man. He's got 2 kids and a very demanding full-time job. So we don't see Bite anymore around the community. Very rarely he'll pop up on Twitch once in a while. He's popped up in my chat a few times while I've been doing runs, and he's like, "Hey man," and be like, "Ah, Bite, what's up, dude?"
yeah.
But I don't get to see him too much anymore. We miss you, Bite.
Once you've gotten into the speed run culture of Doom, what was your initial goal for your runs?
And that's I guess that's part of the story is like I was so slowly blended into the process of becoming part of the speedrunning community. I didn't really have a goal so much because I didn't really know what the objective was right away. But I remember there being a kind of a point where I saw runners like speedrunners using a bunch of glitches to get through the games faster, like skip certain sections. And I remember thinking like, ooh, that's kind of interesting. And Doom is kind of notorious for this sort of thing. You'll see this like pop up on a lot. It's become copy pasta. It's like a joke around the speedrunning community. But you'll see people being like, "Oh, using glitches in speedrunning is cheating. That's not really playing the game." Blah 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 blah. And Doom, for whatever reason, has had a notoriously concentrated grouping of those people in like commenting on videos like, "Oh, you're using glitches. You're not actually speedrunning. Glitches or speedruns with glitches don't count." And to me, I was always like, this is really cool. Like, I want to, like, I think this is awesome to put into the run. Like, I never had that, like, knee jerk reaction of this isn't playing the game. And so when they added 100% Ultra Nightmare to the leaderboard, they added 100% non Ultra Nightmare to the leaderboard. And I remember looking at that thinking, okay, if you play it on easy mode and you pump every glitch you can possibly think of into the game, how much faster can you get this run to be? And so that's where I started like rerouting certain things for easy mode, like because when on Ultra Nightmare on permadeath, you don't have checkpoint reloading for obvious reasons. Oh, this fight went badly, reload checkpoint, start over. You can't really do that on permadeath mode, but on regular easy mode you can do that. And so checkpoint loading allowed for a whole bunch of rerouting stuff. You could duplicate a bunch of items with checkpoint loading, like in the classic, we call it 100% Ultra Nightmare and 100% Classic. In the Classic route, you can pick up a Praetor token seemingly infinitely, and as long as you reload checkpoint before you finish the animation of picking it up, you get the token, but the token's still in the environment, and so you can pick that up over and over and over. And so we pick it up 29 times at the end of level 3 in order to skip picking them up in other places, and that saves overall about 2.5 minutes over the course of the whole run. Something you can't do on Ultra Nightmare. On Ultra Nightmare, you have to get everything at source. Well, you don't have to do that on Classic. So the two have very different routes for that reason. And just over time, myself and Darve, one of the other Doom runners, he sort of came in and rerouted a bunch of stuff and really pushed the time down farther. While he was doing that, a couple other runners, Minifish and very recently Slig, started working on the 100% Ultra Nightmare route. And they started adding glitches to the run that nobody else was doing prior to them. Things like rail boost to skip the first fight and stuff like that. And so we're sort of both on each side of the Classic and Ultra Nightmare side of things, pushing the times down for these two routes. And they are getting to be very, very comparable, despite the fact that Classic is kind of by design much faster. The Ultra Nightmare side of things, they've really pushed the times down really, really deep. Like, I remember at one point in time, we were going crazy watching Bite doing an Ultra Nightmare 100% run where he finally beat the game in under 3 hours. And we were like, holy crap, 100% in under 3 hours. And I think very recently Slig set a world record time of like 2 hours and 7 minutes or something like that. Like we've cut almost an entire hour out of the run since then. And so like this jump from like an hour long jump from 3 hours to 2 hours, just so much has changed in there. And a lot of it has been the adding of like these big skips, these big glitches where we rail boost over fights and we paper clip to skip a cutscene and stuff like that. The runs have really taken very different form from where they were a couple of years ago.
And so, like, how much of a time frame is that from 2018 to the present?
Yeah. So 2018 was like late 2018 when it was added to the leaderboard. And I started working on the classic run about December of 2018. I think was when I started working on it. And then I took a break for a while, and I came back to it. Took a break and came back to it. So over time, and then Dara started running it. I think somewhere like mid 2021 was when because he was an old any percent runner, and then he was like, "Hey, I'm gonna run every single category," and I think he has a run on every single category in Doom 2016. I think he's run every single category at least once. And he was working on 100%. He said very loudly and proudly like 100% is his favorite category out of all of them. He said it's easily the best run in the whole series, or at least in the whole game. And he started working on that about mid 2021, and so he and I were kind of going back and forth trying to push down the time a little bit more. And he and I kept rerouting certain spots. Like he would come up with a route, and then I would reroute him a little bit, then he'd reroute me a little bit, and eventually we started nailing that down. That was about mid 2021, and then just recently, I'd say maybe a few months ago, he found combat rating duplication or combat rating farming, if you want to be kind of technical. And some levels can now be basically you can just kind of boost around the level, pick up all the secrets and everything, and then like in Argent Tower specifically, you can boost your way up to the top of the tower, start the fights, do a bunch of the fight, hit a checkpoint, reload checkpoint, and you keep a bunch of combat rating from the previous checkpoint load, and then you go back in and start the fight again, and you farm, and you can just farm out this combat rating all the way through to the end. And that severely rerouted thing. I think that route saves like 2.5 or 3 minutes over the previous route that I'm still doing because I don't have the computer hardware necessary to actually do this because it requires a really, really beefy computer that I don't have. And so this hardware limitations kept me from learning this new route, but it saves like 2.5 or 3 minutes over the previous route. And that was only just recently discovered. And with little tweaks and stuff like that to the route, he's managed to push the time down to a 2:02:40, I think, or 2:02:50, somewhere in the 2:02 range. So the run is very close to hitting the sub 2 hour mark. I've sort of given up running the game. I've spent my time with Doom, and I think my time with Doom is quickly come to a close. He has sort of stopped running it because he's doing other things as well. So it's only a matter of time till some young blood comes along and manages to push that sub 2 hour mark.
How do you decide on a game that you run? Like, what's the deciding factor for a game that you speed run?
It's a good question. I don't really have a good answer for that. It's sort of like, does the run speak to me in some way? If there's like really good speed tech in it, that will sometimes be a deciding factor. Like Fashion Police Squad's a good example. Like I started doing runs of Fashion Police Squad, and the first couple runs I did were like in the 2 hour range. It was like, oh god, this is a really long and tedious run. And then pretty quickly we started finding some big skips. And we found my favorite glitch in the whole game, which is drip clipping, where you basically just take the drip cannon, you push yourself up against a wall or against the floor, and you just keep firing at it. And eventually you'll pump so much ammunition into the surface that you're up against that you will desync the tick rate against the physics engine, and you just kind of phase through the wall. It's hilariously broken. And so that created some like humongous skips, and just we kept finding these. It was me and Divine. Divine's one of my VIPs. He I think found almost everything, almost all the skips in the game that like are in the run at this point. He found so many of them, and every time we found a new one, we're like, man, this run is getting better and better and better. And now the run's under 40 minutes just because we found ways to skip so many big things. Like there's in levels 9 to 10, there's these 3-minute auto scrollers that they're like literally 3 minutes, like a 3-minute timer on the screen that you have to run down, and we can skip both of those with skips that Divine and I have found. So the run has gotten so good, and so I think for when I was picking that one, it was like I would have given that one up pretty quickly if not for the fact that suddenly we had these huge skips that made the run way more fun and a lot more interesting. But then there's an exception to every rule. Like I run Scorn. There's nothing interesting in Scorn. Scorn is a whole W simulator. So I couldn't tell you why I liked that run, but something about it is just really interesting to me. Like I've run Resident Evil games, and Scorn has a very similar kind of dynamic where it's a very optimizable run. It's very like, can you draw this line as straight as you possibly can? And if you can you know, what's the optimal way to interact with this interaction point? And so it's like little things like that have kind of also have appeal for me. I had a lot of fun kind of learning Scorn. But that's sort of like the exception to the rule. Like there's no good speed tech in the game, so why pick that one? Well, there's like something about it that just kind of speaks to me, and I can't tell you what it is. It's interesting. I don't know what it is, but yeah. So I don't have a great answer for it, but I would say the big things are if there's a good speed tech, and is the run overall interesting to do? Is there like a variety of speed tech? Is every level doing exactly the same thing? Like some runs I won't learn because it's literally just doing the same exact thing every single level. But some runs are really good. Like Rage is a good one where it has strafe hopping. Like literally like Quake style strafe hopping is in it. Cyberpunk 2077. I ran Cyber Psychos for like a very short stint. And that one had K hopping, which is you get this augmentation that slows time down, and then you dash while time is slowed down, and you just fly really quickly. And then on top of that, you can bunny hop to keep the momentum going and just fly around the map, and it's hilariously broken. And then they patched it out. Jerk devs.
Oh no, that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Speaking of dropping games, is there a game that you regret running and or a game you wish you had continued to learn but didn't?
Game I regret running? I don't think I have a game I regret running. I would say that, like, of all the games that I have run, I'd say probably Proteus is the least interesting of them. I do need to go back and relearn the run because when I learned it, there weren't any big bits of speed tech in it, and now there are, and so the run's probably much better now. But when I was learning it initially, it was a pretty boring run. There wasn't a lot interesting in it. It was kind of just run to the exit, but in a way that like was not very interesting. Like Scorn is very much a run to the exit kind of game, but Scorn at least has something interesting to it. Proteus didn't really have that. Well, now with Proteus, you can slow the frame rate down to like sub 20 FPS, run into a wall, reset the frame rate back to normal, and it will fling you up over the level, and you can just drop down to the exit. And like that's cool. So I need to go back and learn that one. But yeah, at the time that I had been learning it, I didn't really like it too much. And I've been running that game since early access. Early access dropped, I think, in like October of 2020, something like that. And the game only recently came out. I think it came out in like August of this year, 2022. So it took a little while to get the full game out and find that, oh, this is actually an interesting run. I just need to go back and actually learn it because I've been lazy about doing that. A game that I regret not continuing with, I don't know if I have one of those either. I will say I started to learn Shadow Warrior 3 at one point, and I got through learning almost all of it. I found the run incredibly frustrating, and I never finished learning it. So I would maybe say I don't regret not learning that one because I found it really frustrating. But I've had a lot of fun watching Meta and Rytro and 83 and all of them kind of hammer their times down, and the run's very interesting to watch, but learning it myself was just incredibly frustrating. So I guess that's sort of the opposite of the answer to your question of do I regret learning a run? No, I very much don't regret not learning Shadow Warrior 3.
That's very fair. Sticking to learning runs, is there any games you're looking forward to running in the future?
I just recently, actually yesterday, finished Bugsnax. And my whole chat has been like, "Are you gonna learn this run? Are you gonna learn this run?" And the run's pretty short, so I don't see any reason why I couldn't learn that one. That might be an interesting speedrun to learn. Callisto Protocol has been on a tirade of skips and finding stuff. So I'm sort of waiting on that one until it sort of evens out a little bit, and then I'll probably learn it. But that run just recently came under 2 hours. That's including cutscenes, so it's becoming a lot easier to run. Like the last run I did before I stopped was I just broken under the sub 3 hour mark, and they've already trimmed another hour off of that with big skips. So once they sort of hammer a little bit more time off of that, I might jump back into learning that one. I do need to go back and finish improving my Turnip Boy Commits Tax Evasion time, because that's another game that I speedrun for some weird reason. But that one, I kind of want to get a better time in it. I'm still not fully happy with the time that I have. There's another game that I played when Realms Deep happened this year. They dropped like a ton of demos for the games, and one game that I played through all of them, and one game that was very nondescript and probably nobody would even know it is called ASCII. It's like ASCII or ASC. I'm not actually sure how you say it. I think it's ASCII, and it just looks like a Quake clone. Very nondescript, very, kind of that pixelated 3D model kind of structure like the way Quake has. But something about the movement in it just seems really interesting. And I think once the full game drops, I think it's going to actually make for a really good speed run. So I might pick that one up as a possible speed run. And hopefully other people join in, because I think that run is actually kind of interesting, despite it being a very nondescript and very kind of bland looking game. I think it might end up being a pretty good speed run.
Very cool. Do you have any event rituals?
Event rituals, interesting. That's funny that you asked that, because I just came off a string of doing, I think, 1,000 marathons. I did like Horrible Games, Green Gaming Fest, and like a bunch of others. No holidays allowed. And I had the very fortunate privilege of being able to host for all of those events as well. So I got to jump on the mic and read donations. So I have I was doing all these runs at these events and also hosting. So I think I was too focused on being able to do the job in the first place to actually have a ritual. So I don't know if I have one. I will say, before every event, I do brush my teeth. That's, I would say, my one ritual thing that I do before every event is I brush my teeth. I think that's about it. I also raise my desk up to standing height, and I do the run standing up, just because I don't know, for some reason I feel like if I do the run standing up for a marathon, it's like good luck or something like that. I don't really believe in luck, but for whatever reason I feel better about doing the run for a marathon if I have the desk in standing position. So it's those two things.
Any particular reason why the brushing of the teeth?
I couldn't tell you. I feel like I need to have my teeth brushed before I get on camera.
Well, hopefully you're not.
About it.
I hope you're not drinking coffee after brushing the teeth, because that would sound terrible.
Yeah, I always wait till after I've had the coffee, then I brush my teeth, and then I get on stream. Sometimes I will drink the coffee on stream, and then on break I'll go brush my teeth and come back. But that would be like for my regular stream, not for like a marathon run.
Very fair. Do you have any influences? Like, do you have any people that influenced you throughout your speedrunning career?
Byte was definitely my first big influence. He was the one that sort of pushed me into speedrunning in the first place, which is really funny because Doom was the only thing he ever ran, and he always sort of said like, "Oh, I'm not a speedrunner. I'm not a speedrunner," even though he did speedruns of Doom. He always denied the moniker that he was a speedrunner, which is kind of funny. But he would probably be my big influence early on. Since he's left now, he's not really around so much anymore. Divine has been a big influence on me to kind of improve my Fashion Police Squad time, because he kept finding all these skips and everything. And so it was like, and I asked him, like, how come you're not doing runs of this? Because he doesn't do runs. He just finds all the glitches. And I said, why aren't you doing runs yourself? He's like, I don't want to run it. I just want to find the stuff and then show you, and you run it. It's like, all right, I guess we can do that. So he and I have collaborated pretty thoroughly on Fashion Police Squad, and I would say he's definitely my big influence there. Darve has pushed me in running Doom a lot, and I'm not like a really super competitive person when it comes to speedrunning. I'm not a huge fan of oh, I gotta get a world record kind of thing. I don't buy into any of that. But Dara and I have had a very good dynamic. Dara's a really good friend of mine at this point, and he and I have had a really good dynamic of going back and forth, trying to optimize Doom as much as possible. Not for competitive sake, but just for the sake of, can we get this under 2 hours. Can we do it? So we've been like trying to just polish this run just to see if we could break that 2 hour mark, and I think we are getting close. I mean it's been proven possible. His sum of best is under 2 hours now, so I think it's definitely a possibility. But I would say Divine and Dar are kind of like my two big influences nowadays. I wasn't really around for like the Siglemic era. I didn't know what speedrunning was. I wasn't even really on the internet that much back then, so I didn't see all that stuff and know what was happening with it. So I couldn't say that like I would have these big influences from that point in time. But the modern day influences, I would say it's definitely those two for those two games. Zen, I also got to give a shout out to Zen as my big influence for running Rage. Zen is this monster of a speedrunner in running Rage, and I swear I see like I watched his run. I think how is he doing all this stuff so quickly? Because he can just like fly through each section so quickly in a way that's just baffling to me. So I gotta give a shout out to Zen too. Zen's another one of my big influences for sure.
Very cool. Is there a game that you love but you absolutely cannot speedrun it?
Grand Theft Auto San Andreas.
Why?
That's my favorite game of all time. I adore that game to death. CJ and I we're kin. But that run is extremely long. It's a very hardware inaccessible game at this point. I tried getting it to run on my computer a few years ago, and it wouldn't even boot. The game is just too old at this point. There's a way I think to fix it with community mods, but I don't ever mess around with that stuff. I can't be arsed to try to install mods and try to fix all that stuff. I just gave up on it. But the run, the standard any percent run, I think is like 15 minutes, because they do this weird thing where they pause and run from one mission to another mission marker, and they just warps them into the second half of the very last mission, and they finish the game that way. It's very broken. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I kind of look at that like, I don't know if I want to do that. That looks kind of not interesting or fun to me. But then the other any percent run that doesn't do that is like 3 or 4 hours long, and it's like, I don't want to do that either. And I feel like speedrunning Grand Theft Auto, just in general, like you could talk to KZ Fru or PMC Trilogy about this sort of thing, where once you've run one of them, you could probably learn the other ones pretty easily. But if you haven't learned one of the Grand Theft Auto runs, it's like a very different skill set. It'd be like learning how to run Silent Hill when all you've ever run are first-person shooters. It's like a different skill set, and some stuff's going to carry over, yeah, but it's much easier to learn Silent Hill 3 if you've run Silent Hill 2. That's a skill set that's going to carry over much more readily than learning a bunch of first-person shooters and then trying to learn Silent Hill. I feel like it's the same thing with Grand Theft Auto. Is like I don't run a lot of stuff that's not first-person shooters. I have, but not a lot of things. And so trying to go into learning something like Grand Theft Auto would be, I think, a lot more challenging. And the run is just long enough that I don't know if I have the gumption to try to sit down and learn that.
That is very, very fair. Are there any games that you're currently playing, be it not speedrun, offline, what have you?
Yes. So offline, I've been playing Drug Dealer Simulator. I don't know why, but that game is fun. One of my viewers, Archie, he gifted it to me on Steam, and I died laughing because he speedruns it. I don't remember if he's a moderator for the game, but he speedruns it, and he submitted it actually for AGDQ as a race, and it didn't get in, but I can't imagine why not. Content warning, but I would have really loved to have seen that. But he gifted it to me, and I was like, all right, I'll play this, and it's actually, no pun intended, a very addicting game, and so I don't know if I'll ever speedrun that unless he like forces me to, but I've been playing that one offline, and currently I have a list of stuff in my backlog that I'm going through on stream, and right now I've got a bunch of boomer shooters that I'm trying to go through. The one we just started yesterday was Dread Templar, which is okay. It's not anything super great, but sometimes a not great game can be a great speedrun, and so you never know, I might pick that one up.
Very true. Also, what is a boomer shooter? I don't know if that's a genre, or is that like a specific game that has games within it?
It's a genre. It's sort of it's kind of like a Metroidvania as a genre is like Metroid, Castlevania style games. Boomer shooter is sort of like the style of game of like Doom, Quake, Duke Nukem 3D, like the old school.
Okay, so
shooters.
like your Wolfensteins and stuff like that, like
like
your early '90s shooters.
Exactly, yeah. So like Proteus is a boomer shooter. It was made in the modern era, but it's made in that style of like old school pixelated 3D models and like very old school looking graphics. Fashion Police Squad's a boomer shooter, right? It's all 2D sprites. It's sort of that old school look and feel to the game, but the advantage that modern era games have is they can take that old school vibe and attach new modern mechanics to it and make what is ultimately a much better quality of life experience compared to playing. Like if you try to go back and play old Quake now, some stuff doesn't carry over from old Quake because it's just the game's old at this point. It's some stuff that we didn't know back then we know now has led to games being improved significantly. Like old school Doom doesn't have y-axis integration, so you can only move on your x-axis, your x and z axis. And so if you want to aim at an enemy that's up, you just aim in their direction and it will auto aim upward. Well, that's fine for that era, but if you try to do that now, I don't know, something about that just bugs me. Like we can add a y-axis so easily. Let me aim at the enemy myself. Like, I don't like having the game auto aim a y-axis integration for me. Like I feels like a relic of an old era that doesn't need to be carried over. Like we can add that in there now. Let's add that in there. So you have boomer shooters now that are doing that, where you can move the camera around in full gyroscope and aim at whatever you want. And I like that we have sort of moved into that era of gaming where we can take these old school looking games and like kind of pay homage to them, but also update them considerably.
So Doom 1993 runs on a McDonald's kiosk when?
I've never even run old school Doom. I've never run that. I've never run anything but Doom 2016. But I believe they should have the game running on a McDonald's kiosk sometime next week.
I don't know if you've seen the meme of people actually getting Doom to run on those things.
I've seen it run on a pregnancy test and in Notepad. They got it running on Notepad.
Yeah, it's
amazing.
Yeah, it is, for sure. What's your favorite coffee? Because of course the show is Speedrunners and Coffee, so of course we have to ask, what's your favorite coffee?
It's a good question. This one I'm drinking right now is my mom actually just got these for me yesterday for Christmas. She got me a small batch Origin sample pack, and it has 4 bags of coffee, single origin. One's from Ethiopia, one's from Rwanda, one's from Sumatra, and this one that I'm drinking is from Kenya. Very, very good. The coffee that I normally drink, though, is from Rio Grande Roasters. It's the Pinon, and as far as I know, you can only get it on Amazon, which unfortunate because I don't like giving Amazon more of my money than I have to, but I can't find it anywhere else. And I get the 3-pound bag at a time, and it's very, very good. It's got a very chocolatey kind of smell to it. It's very, very good coffee. I've been getting that for 4 or 5 years now, as like my regular.
Very nice. And if people want to find you, where can they?
You can find me at twitch.tv/Danejerus, Danejerus. I do a lot of speedruns of very different things. I mean, we've talked about the gamut that I run, you know, from Doom 2016 up to Turnip Boy Commits Tax Evasion and a whole big swath of stuff in the middle of that. So yeah, that's where you can find me. And yeah.
Now that Turnip Boy Commits Tax Evasion, that has nothing to do with Animal Crossing, right?
No, it's nothing like Animal Crossing. It's a top-down isometric. It's not a platformer, but it's you run around and you have to collect a bunch of things for Mayor Onion because you've committed tax evasion, and now you have to pay him back, so you become his personal secretary. But Mayor Onion is evil. Spoiler alert! And there's a whole gimmick to it. They're actually releasing the sequel next year, 2023. It is Turnip Boy robs a bank, and Turnip Boy has a gun.
All right, definitely not anything related to Animal Crossing.
Definitely not. If you like murder, tax evasion, murder, grand larceny, murder, petty theft, murder, definitely get that game. There's a lot of crime in that game.
Certainly seems so. When you initially said that earlier, I was like, Wait, is that like an Animal Crossing category or
Nope, it's a
something?
game.
No, it's a game. It's
It is a game.
definitely a game.
It's one of the games I've ever seen.
Now, you mentioned that you primarily run on PC, but could you see yourself doing console runs at any point?
I'm not opposed to it, but the only console I have is a PS4. I never got a PS5 or an Xbox Series X, and so I don't really have access to that stuff. I'm not opposed to it at all, but I would have to have a console and a capture card before I could do that. And so many things now that come out on console also come out on PC, so I feel like if it's on PC, I could just run it on PC. But definitely not against the idea of doing that.
Okay, very good. This has been a pleasure to do this. Thank you so much for coming on to episode 5. Very much a pleasure. I can't wait to see what speedruns you do next and whatnot. Also, good luck at AGDQ. At the time of recording, we're actually recording this the day after Christmas. For anyone that's wondering why we mentioned gifts earlier and whatnot, it's because it's like Christmas time. These are recorded way in advance because I wanted to make sure that I had somewhat of a lead up for these things. But definitely, good luck in future events and whatnot.
Thank you.
Thank you, and we will see you all next time.